Mr. Ernest Wilde.
How are you, my dear Ernest? What brings you up to town?
Pleasure, pleasure. Don't you bring anyone anywhere? You're eating as usual, I see, Algie.
I believe that it is customary in good society to take some slight refreshment at 5 o'clock. Where have you been since last Thursday?
Oh, in the country.
Oh, what on earth do you do there?
When one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. It is excessively boring.
And who would be that you amuse?
Oh, neighbors, neighbors.
Have you got nice neighbors in your part of Shropshire?
Perfectly horrid. Never speak to one of them.
And how immensely you must amuse them. Well, Shropshire is your county, is it not?
Shropshire. Yes, of course. Well, Shropshire is natural. Hello, what is all this? Why all these cups? Why cucumber sandwiches? Why such reckless extravagance in one so young? Who is coming to tea?
No, merely Aunt Augusta. And Gwendolen.
Oh, how perfectly delightful.
Yes, it is all very well, but I am afraid that Aunt Augusta will quite approve of your being here.
May I ask why not?
My dear fellow, the way that you flirt with Gwendolen is perfectly disgraceful. It's almost as bad as the way that Gwendolen flirts with you.
I am in love with Gwendolen. I have come to town with the express purpose of asking her to marry me.
I thought you said you came here for pleasure. I call that business.
decidedly unromantic you are.
I don't see anything romantic in that proposal. Why, it is very romantic to be in love. It's nothing romantic about a definite proposal. Well, one may be accepted. One usually is, I believe. But then the excitement's all over. The very essence of romance is uncertainty. And if I ever get married, I would certainly try to forget that fact.
I have no doubt about that, dear Algie. The divorce courts were specially made for people whose memories are so curiously constituted.
There's no use speculating on the subject. Divorces are made in heaven. Please don't touch the cucumber sandwiches. They are made specially for Aunt Augusta.
You've been eating them all the time.
Well, that is quite the matter. She is my aunt. Here, have some bread and butter. The bread and butter is for Gwendolen. Gwendolen is devoted to her bread and butter.
Oh my, what good bread and butter it is too.
Oh, my dear brother. You may not eat as if you're going to eat at all. You act as if you're already married to her. You aren't already married to her. And I don't think that you ever will be.
Why on earth do you say that?
Well, in the first place, girls never marry the men that they flirt with. Girls don't think it right.
That is nonsense.
It isn't. And it accounts for the extraordinary number of bachelors that one sees on the place. And in the second place, I don't give my consent.
Consent.
My dear fellow, Gwendolen is my first cousin. And before I ever allow you to marry her, you will have to clear the whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? I don't know anyone about me.
Could you bring me the cigarette case that Mr. Wilde left in the smoking room last time he died here?
Yes, sir.
Do you mean to say that you had my cigarette case all this time? I would have told me. I've been writing very frantic letters to Scotland Yard. I was very nearly offering a large reward.
Well, I wish that you would. I'm more than usually hard up these days.
There is no use offering a large reward now that the thing has been found.
Well, I've done it to rather need of you, Ernest, I must say. But it makes no matter now, for now that I read the inscription on the inside, I find that the thing isn't yours after all.
Of course it isn't mine. You've seen it 100 times. And there is nothing for you to read. You have no right whatsoever to read what is written inside.
It is absurd to have a hard and fast rule about what one should and shouldn't read. Half of modern culture depends on what one shouldn't read.
Well aware of that. That's why I told you. After all, that is not something that people are discussing in private. Now, Algie, I simply want my cigarette case back!
But this isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case is a present from somebody in the name of Cecily. And you said that you didn't know anyone of that name.
If you must know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt.
Yes, she's a charming old woman. She lives in Tunbridge Wells.
Well, why does she call herself Little Cecily if she is your aunt that lives at Tunbridge Wells? From Little Cecily, with her fondest love.
Well, what on earth is there in that? You see, some aunts are tall. Some aunts, they are not tall. That, I assure you, is a matter that an aunt may be able to decide for herself. You seem to think that every aunt should be exactly as your aunt is. That is absurd. Now, Algie, for heaven's sake, get back!
Why did you go to her uncle? From Little Cecily, with her fondest love to her dear Uncle Jack. Now, there is no objection, I admit, to an aunt being a small aunt. But why would an aunt, no matter what her size may be, would call her nephew her uncle? I can't quite make out. And besides, your name isn't Jack at all, it's Ernest.
It's not Ernest. It is Jack.
But you've always told me it was Ernest. I have introduced you to everyone as Ernest. Why, you answer to the name of Ernest. Why, you look as if your name is Ernest. It is perfectly absurd that you're saying that your name isn't Ernest. It's on your card. Here's one. Mr. Ernest Worthing. Before the Albany. I shall keep this as proof of your name, in case you ever attempt to deny to me or Gwendolen or to anyone else.
My name is Ernest in town, but it is also Jack in the country.
But that doesn't account for why your small aunt, who lives in Tunbridge Wells, would call you her dear uncle. Come now, old one, let's have the thing out at once.
You speak exactly as if you were a dentist. It's a very vulgar thing to do, to speak like a dentist when one is not one. It produces a false impression.
And that is what dentists always do. Now, go on. Why are Ernest in town and Jack in the country? And I may mention to you that I have always suspected you of being a secret and confirmed Bunburyist. And I'm quite sure of it now.
Bunburyist? What do you mean by Bunburyist?
I will reveal to you the meaning of that incomparable expression once you are so kind as to inform me why you are Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Then produce my cigarette case first.
Here it is. Now produce an explanation, and pray, make it improbable.
There is nothing improbable at all about my explanation. In fact, I think it's rather quite ordinary. You see, the late Mr. Thomas Cardew, the man who adopted me when I was a little boy, he made me in his will guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Cecily, who addresses to me as uncle, and motives of respect that you could not possibly negotiate, lives with me in my place in the country. She lives under the careful watch of our address, Miss Prism.
And where is that place in the country, by the way?
That's no use of you, dear boy. You will not be invited. I tell you quite candidly, the place is not in Shropshire.
Well, I suspected that, my dear fellow. I've Bunbury over Shropshire on 2 separate occasions. Now go on. Why are you Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
Algernon, I don't know whether you'll be able to understand my real motives. You are hardly serious enough. You see, when one is placed in the position of guardian, one must adopt a very high moral tone in all things. In fact, it is one's duty to do so. And as a very high moral tone can't be said to induce much to one's health or one's happiness. I have always, in order to get to the town whenever I wish, pretended to have a younger brother by the name of Ernest. I say Ernest lives in the Albany, he gets the most dreadful scrapes. That, my dear fellow, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure, and it's never simple. If my life were either, it'd be quite tedious, and modern literature, a complete possibility.
That would not be at all a bad thing.
Literary criticism isn't quite your forte, my dear fellow. You shouldn't try it. But what you are, the Bunburyist. I'm quite right in saying you're a Bunburyist, and you may be the most advanced Bunburyist that I know of.
Earth you mean?
You have invented a very useful younger brother in order for you to come up to town as often as you like. Whereas I have invented an invaluable permanent invalid named Bunbury, so that I may go into the country so often as I choose. Bunbury is perfectly invaluable. And if it weren't for Bunbury's extraordinarily bad health, for instance, I wouldn't be able to dine with you tonight at Willis's, for really I have been engaged to Aunt Augusta for more than a week.
I haven't asked you to dine with me anywhere tonight.
I know. You're quite careless about sending out invitations. It's very foolish of you. And nothing more to do more than not receiving an invitation.
You had much better dine with your Aunt Augusta tonight.
I haven't the smallest intention of doing anything of the kind. In the first place, I dine with them one day, and dining once a week with one's own relations is more than enough. In the second place, whenever I do dine there, I'm always treated as part of the family, and I'm either sat with no women or two at a time. And in the third place, I know perfectly well whom she will set me next to, She will sit me next to Mary Farquhar, who always flirts with her husband across the dinner table. Oh, it isn't pleasant. Indeed, it isn't even decent. And that sort of thing is enormously on the increase. The amount of women in London who flirt with their own husbands is perfectly disgraceful. It doesn't look good. It's practically airing one's clean linens in public. But besides, now that I know you to be a confirmed and secret Ernest, naturally I have to talk to you about it and explain the rules.
I am not a bumverse at all. I am quite prepared to kill my brother. In fact, I think I shall kill him at any rate. You see, Cecily is a little bit too much interested in him. It's rather a bore. So I'm going to get rid of my brother. And I suppose that you do the same to your Mr. Miss... You're equally friendly of certain name.
Nothing will induce me to part with Bunbury. Bunbury is perfectly invaluable. And if you ever get married, which seems to be extremely problematic, you'll be very glad to know Bunbury. You'll find that a man that marries without knowing Bunbury has a very tedious time of it.
That is absurd. If I marry a nice, charming girl like Gwendolen, who's the only girl in my life that I ever wanted to marry, then I certainly will not want to know Bunbury.
Well, then your wife will. You don't seem to understand that in married life, 3 is a company, and 2 is none.
That, my dear boy, is the same theory that the corrupt French drama has been propounding for the last 50 years.
Oh, yes, and that the happy English home has proved in half the time.
Don't try to be cynical.
Oh, it isn't easy to be anything nowadays. Not with all of this beastly competition about. Ah, that must be Aunt Augusta. Only relatives and creditors ring in that Wagnerian manner. Now, if I get her out of the way for 10 minutes or so that you may have the opportunity of proposing to Gwendolen, will you allow me to dine with you tonight, Ulysses?
I suppose so, if you want to.
Yes. But you must be serious about it. I hate those who aren't serious about meals. It's so shallow.
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax.
Good afternoon, dear Algernon. I hope you are behaving very well.
Oh, I am feeling very well, Aunt Augusta.
It's not quite the same thing. In fact, the two things roll together.
Well, dear me, you are smart.
I'm always smart. Aren't I, Mr. Worthing?
Miss Fairfax, you are quite good.
Oh, I hope I'm not that. I leave no room for development, and I intend to develop in many directions. I'm sorry we were a little late, Algernon. I was obliged to on Lady Halberry. I had not been there since her poor husband's death. I never saw a woman so altered. She looks quite 20 years younger. And now I'll have a cup of tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Certainly, Aunt Augusta.
Won't you come and join me? Thanks, Mamma. Where I am.
Good heavens, Lane! Why are there no cucumber sandwiches? I ordered them specially for Aunt Augusta.
There were no cucumber sandwiches in the market this morning, sir. I went down twice.
No cucumbers?
No, sir. Not even for ready money.
Thank you, Lane. That will do.
Thank you, sir.
I'm very distressed to hear about there being no cucumbers in the market today, Aunt Augusta. Especially for ready money.
It really makes no matter, Algernon. I had some crumpets at Lady Halberry, who seems to me to be living entirely for pleasure now.
Yes, I hear that her hair has turned quite gold from grief.
It certainly has changed its color. From what cause, I of course cannot say. Ah, thank you. But quite a treat for you tonight, Algernon. I'm going to send you down with Mary Farquhar. She is such a nice woman and so attentive to her husband. It is delightful to watch them.
I'm afraid, Aunt Augusta, that I will have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight after all.
I hope not. It would put my table completely out. Your uncle would have to dine upstairs. Fortunately, he's accustomed to that.
Well, it is a great bore, and needless to say, a great disappointment to me, but the fact is that I have just received a telegram stating that my poor friend Bunbury has become very ill again, and they seem to think that I should be with him.
It is very strange. This Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Yes, Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
Well, I must say, Algernon, that I think it is high time that your friend Bunbury made up his mind whether he was going to live or to die. This shilly-shallying with the question is absurd. Nor do I in any way promote the extenuating circumstances in which he is ill. Illness is not to be tolerated in anyone. Health is the primary duty of life. I'm always telling that to your poor uncle, although he never takes much notice. At least as far as any improvements in his ailments go. I would be much obliged if you would ask Mr. Bunbury from me to be kind enough not to have a relapse on Saturday, for I rely on you to arrange my music for me. It is my last reception, and I want something that encourages conversation, particularly at the end of the season when everyone has practically said all they have to say, which in most cases is probably not much.
I will speak for Bunbury, Aunt Augusta. That is, if he's still conscious. But I believe that I can promise you that he will be just fine by Saturday. But you see, the great difficulty is in the music. When one plays good music, nobody listens. And when one plays bad music, nobody talks. But I'll run over the program that I've drawn out if you'd be just so kind as to follow me into the next room for a moment.
Thank you, Algernon. I'm sure it will be delightful after a few explanations. French songs I cannot possibly allow. Everyone always seems to think they are improper in either look shocked, which is vulgar, or laugh, which is worse. But German sounds to me a thoroughly respectable language, and indeed I believe so. Gwendolen, you will accompany me. Certainly, Ma.
Charming day it has been, Miss Wilkins.
Pray, Mr. Worthing, don't talk to me about the weather. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I always feel quite certain it means something else. That makes me so nervous.
I do need something else.
I thought you might. In fact, I'm never wrong.
Miss Fairfax, I would like to be allowed to take advantage of Lady Bracken's temporary absence.
Oh, I would certainly advise you to do so. Mamma has a way of coming suddenly back into the room that I often have to speak to her about.
And Miss Fairfax, ever since I have met you, I have thought you more charming than any other girl that I have ever met since I met you.
I'm quite aware of the fact, and have often wished that in public at any rate you have been more demonstrative. For me, you've always had an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. The fact is constantly mentioned in the more expensive monthly magazines, and has even reached the provincial pulpit, so I'm told. And my ideal has always been to love someone of the name of Ernest. There is something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. The moment Algernon said that he had a friend called Ernest, I knew I was destined to love you.
Oh my goodness, do you really love me?
Passionately.
Oh darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
My own Ernest.
Yes. Do you mean to say that you would not love me if my name was not Ernest?
But it is Ernest.
Well, yes, dear, but just supposing that my name was not Ernest, do you mean to say that you could not love me then?
Ah, this is
I must say that I don't really care for the name of Ernest. No, I don't think it suits me.
It suits you perfectly. It's a divine name. It has a music of its own. It produces vibrations.
Well, I just think there are many other much nicer names, like Jack, for instance. That's a very charming name.
Jack. No, there is very little music in the name Jack, if any at all indeed. It does not thrill. It produces absolutely no vibrations. I have known several Jacks, and they have all, without a question, been more than usually plain. Besides, Jack is notorious domesticity for John. And I pity any woman who's married to a man called John. She'd probably never be allowed to know the entrancing pleasure of a single moment's solitude. The only real safe name is Ernest.
Gwendolen, I must be christened at once. Mary, we must be married at once.
Married, Mr. Worthing.
Yes, Gwendolen, I mean, you know that I love you, and you've not let me believe that you are completely indifferent to me.
I adore you, but you haven't proposed to me yet. Nothing at all has been said about marriage. The subject hasn't even been touched on.
Well, could I ask you to marry me now?
I think it would be an admirable opportunity. And to spare you any possible disappointment, Mr. Worthing, I think it's only fair to tell you quite frankly beforehand that I am determined to accept you.
Oh, Gwendolen!
Yes, Mr. Worthing, what have you got to say to me?
But, Gwendolen, you know what I have to say to you.
Yes, but you don't say it.
Gwendolen, will you marry me?
Of course, darling. How long have you been about it? I'm afraid you have very little practice in how to propose.
My own one. You are the only person in the world who I've ever loved.
Oh, yes, but often men practice proposing all the time. My brother Gerald does it. All my girlfriends tell me so. Your eyes are so wonderfully brown, Ernest. They are quite brown. I hope you always look at me like that, especially when other people are present.
Mr. Worthing, rise up from your semi-recumbent posture. It is most indecorous.
I must beg you to retire. This is no place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing isn't quite finished yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
I am engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Pardon me, you are nothing of the kind. Whenever you do become engaged, I or your father, should his health permit him, will inform you of the fact. An engagement to come on a young girl is a surprise, pleasant or unpleasant as the case may be. It is hardly a matter that she could be allowed to arrange for herself. Now I have a few questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing. While I'm making these inquiries, you, Gwendolen, will wait for me below in the carriage.
Mamma!
In the carriage, Gwendolen. Gwendolen, the carriage.
Yes, Mamma.
You take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell, but I prefer to stand.
I feel bound to tell you that you are not on my list of eligible young men, although I keep the same list as the dear Duchess of Boston has. We work together, in fact. However, I am ready to put your name down, should your answers be what a really affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Yes, I must admit I smoke, Lady Bracknell.
I'm glad to hear it. A man should have an occupation of some kind. There are far too many idle men in London as it is. How old are you?
I am 29.
A very good age to be married at. I am always
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell.
I am pleased to hear it. I do not approve of anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate exotic fruit. Touch it, and the bloom is gone. The whole theory behind modern education is radically unsound. Fortunately, in England, at any rate, education produces no effect whatsoever. If it did, it would probably prove a serious danger to the upper classes and lead to acts of violence in Grosvenor Square. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In land or in investments?
In investments chiefly.
That is satisfactory. What between the duties expected of one during one's lifetime and the duties exacted from one after one's death, land has ceased to be either a profit or a pleasure. It gives one position and prevents one from keeping it up. That is all that can be said about land.
Well, Lady Bracknell, I do own a country home with some land, of course, attached to it. Oh, but only about 1,500 acres or so, I believe. But I don't really rely on that for my income, no. In fact, as far as I can make out, the only people who make any money off of it are, well, the poachers.
A country house, you say? How many bedrooms? Oh, well, that matter can be cleared up afterwards. You do have a townhouse, I hope. A girl with a simple, unspoiled nature like Ernest could hardly be expected to reside in the country.
I do own a house in Belgrave Square, though it is let out by the year from Lady Bloxham. But I can get it back whenever I please, with 6 months' notice, that is.
Lady Bloxham? I don't know her.
Oh, yes, she is a woman most advanced in years. She does about very little now.
Nowadays, that is no guarantee of respectability of character. What number in Belgrave Square?
149.
Fashionable side. I thought there was something. However, that could easily be altered.
Do you mean the fashion or the side?
Both, if necessary, I presume. What are your politics?
Oh, I'm afraid that I really have none. I'm a liberal unionist.
Ah, they count as Tories. They dine with us in the evening. Or come at night at any rate. On to minor matters. Are your parents living?
I have lost both my parents, Lady Bracknell.
To lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, may be regarded as a misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. Who was your father? He was evidently a man of some wealth. Was he born in what the radical papers call purple of commerce, or did he rise in the ranks of the aristocracy?
I'm afraid, Lady Bracknell, that I really don't know. You see, I told you that I had lost both my parents, but it would be far nearer the truth to say that my parents, they had lost me. I don't know who I am by birth. I was found.
Found?
Yes, the late Mr. Thomas Cardew, a man of extremely kind and charitable nature, he found me, and he gave me the name of Worthing because at the time he just so happened to have a first-class ticket to Worthing in his pocket. Worthing is a place in Sussex. It is a seaside resort.
And where did this charitable gentleman that had a first-class ticket to the seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag?
Yes, Lady Bracknell, a handbag. It's a rather large, green leather handbag with handles to it. A rather ordinary handbag, in fact.
In what locality did this Mr. James or Thomas Cardew come across this ordinary handbag?
The cloakroom at Victoria Station.
The cloakroom at Victoria Station?
Yes, it was the right line, however.
The line is immaterial. Mr. Worthing, I confess I feel somewhat bewildered by what you have just told me. To be born, or at any rate bred, in a handbag, whether it had handles or not, seems to me to display a contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life. Which reminds one of the worst excesses of the French Revolution. And I presume you know what that unfortunate movement led to. As for the particular locality in which the handbag was found, a cloakroom at the railway station might serve to conceal a social indiscretion. It has probably been used for such purposes before now. But it could hardly be an assured basis for a recognized position in good society.
Lady Bracknell, can I ask then what you have me do? I need not say that I would do anything to assure Gwendolen's happiness.
I would advise you, Mr. Worthing, to find some relations as soon as possible, and to produce at least one parent of either sex before the end of the season.
Lady Bracknell, I don't really see how I could possibly do that. Oh, I can, however, produce the handbag at any rate. It is in my dressing room at home. I really think that should satisfy you.
Me, sir? What has it to do with me? You can hardly imagine that I, Lord Bracknell, would allow our only daughter, a girl brought up with the utmost care, to marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with a hustle. Good day, Mr. Worthing.
Good day. Idiot you are!
Did it go off all right, old boy? Oh, you don't need to tell me that Gwendolen refused you. Oh, Gwendolen is always refusing people. I find it to be the most ill-natured of her.
Gwendolen is as right as a trivet. As far as she is concerned, we were engaged. Oh, mother, however. Horrid. I've had such a gorgon in all my life. I really don't quite know what a gorgon is like, but I am quite sure that Lady Bracknell is one. Needless to say, she is a monster without being a myth, which I find rather unfair. I apologize, Algie. I suppose I shouldn't speak so ill of your own mom before you.
My dear boy, I love hearing my relations abused. It's the only thing that makes me put up with it at all. Relations are simply a tedious pack of people who haven't the remotest idea of how to live, nor the smallest instinct of when to die.
That's nonsense.
It isn't.
I'm not going to sit here and argue with you about it. You always want to argue things.
Well, that is what things were originally made for.
On my honor, Algie, if I believed that, I'd shoot myself. Oh, Algernon, you don't suppose there's any chance of Gwendolen becoming anything like her mother in, oh, say, 150 years or so?
Women always turn out like their mothers. That is their tragedy. Men never do. That is ours.
Is that clever?
Perfectly phrased. And quite as true as any observation in civilized life should be.
Well, I am sick to death of cleverness. It seems everywhere you go nowadays, you find nothing but clever people. Oh, goodness, to become an absolute public nuisance. I wish to goodness we had some fools left.
We have.
Then I should very much like to meet them. What do you suppose they talk about?
The fools? But the clever people, of course.
Fools.
And did you tell Gwendolen about your being Ernest in town, Jack in the country?
Dear boy, one doesn't tell those sorts of things to sweet, refined girls like Gwendolen. The truth is not the sort of thing you tell them. What extraordinary ideas you have about how to behave to a woman.
The only way to behave to a woman is to make love to her if she is pretty, and to someone else if she is plain.
That is nonsense.
What about your brother, the profligate Ernest?
Oh, I will be rid of him before the week is through. I shall say he died quite suddenly in Paris of apoplexy. Many people die quite suddenly of apoplexy, don't they?
Yes, dear fellow, but it's hereditary. It's the sort of thing that runs in families. But you'd best say that he was carried off by a severe chill.
And you're quite sure the severe chill is not hereditary?
Of course it isn't.
Yes. Then my brother Ernest is carried off quite suddenly in Paris by a severe chill. That gets rid of him.
But didn't you say that Miss Cardew was a little too much interested in your brother? Won't she feel his loss a great deal?
Oh, that's no matter. Cecily, I am glad to say, is not one of those silly romantic girls. She has a capital appetite. She goes on very long walks, and she pays absolutely no attention at all to her lessons.
about your having an excessively pretty ward who is only just 18?
My dear fellow, one does not blurt these sorts of things out to people, and besides, Gwendolen and Cecily are quite certain to be great friends. In fact, I will bet you anything you please that within an hour of meeting each other, they will call each other sister.
Women only do that after they've called each other a lot of other things first. Now, if we want to get at the table at Willis's, we must go and dress now. Do you know that it's nearly 7?
It's almost always nearly 7.
Well, I'm hungry. I never knew a time when you weren't.
So what shall we do after dinner then? Maybe we go to a theater?
Oh, no, I hate listening.
Then what about a club?
No, I hate talking.
Then maybe we trot around to the Empire?
Round 10? No, I cannot stand to look at things. I'm so silly.
What shall we do?
Nothing.
Nothing. Doing nothing is excessively hard work. But I suppose I don't mind hard work, so long as there is no definite objective of any kind.
Miss Beckons.
Gwendolen, upon my word.
Algie, kindly turn your back. I have something particular to say to Mr. Worthing.
Really, Gwendolen, I don't know if I can allow this at all.
Algie, you always adopt a strictly immoral attitude towards life. You're not quite old enough for that yet. Ernest! We may never be married. From the expression on Mamma's face, I fear we never shall. Few parents nowadays pay any regard to what their children say to them. The old-fashioned respect for the young is fast dying out. Whatever influence I had over Mamma, I lost at the age of 3. But though she may prevent us from becoming man and wife, and I may marry someone else, and marry often, nothing she could possibly do could alter my eternal devotion to you.
Oh, Gwendolen.
The story of your romantic origin, as related to me by Mamma with unpleasing comments, has naturally stirred the deeper fibers of my nature. Your Christian name holds an irresistible fascination. The simplicity of your character makes you exquisitely incomprehensible to me. Your town address at the Albany I have. What is your address in the country?
It is the Manor House, Wilde, Hertfordshire.
There's a good postal service, I suppose. It might be necessary to do something desperate. That, of course, will require serious consideration. I'll communicate with you daily.
My own one.
How long do you remain in town?
Till Monday.
Good. Algie, you may turn around now.
Thanks, I've already turned around.
You may also ring the bell.
Oh, well, Gwendolen, you will let me see your carriage, won't you?
Certainly.
I will see Miss Fairfax out.
Yes, sir.
A glass of sherry, Lane.
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow, Lane, I'm going Bunbury.
Yes, sir.
I probably won't be back till Monday, so you may put up my smoking jacket and my dress clothes as well as the rest of the Bunbury suits.
Yes, sir.
I hope tomorrow will be a fine day, Lane.
It never is, sir.
Lane, you are a perfect pessimist.
I do my best to give satisfaction.
My, now there's a sweet child. intellectual girl, the only girl in my life who I ever saw. What are you so amused at?
Oh, I'm just so anxious about my poor friend Gwendolen. That's all.
If you don't take care, your friend Gunbury is going to get you into a dreadful scrape one of these days.
Well, I love scripts. They're the only things in life that aren't so serious.
You speak nonsense, never anything but nonsense.
And nobody ever does.
Cecily, sure is such a useful veterinarian occupation as the watering of plants is rather more consuming than yours. Especially in a moment with such intellectual pleasure to meet you. Here are your German grammars on the table. Right up to page 15, we will repeat yesterday's lesson.
But I don't like German. It isn't at all the way I like it. And of course, they want to look quite plain in a German lesson.
Child, you know your guardian is anxious for you to improve yourself in every way. You laid particular stress on your German when he was leaving for town yesterday. Indeed, he always lays stress on your German when he's leaving for town.
Your Uncle Jack is so very serious. Sometimes he's so serious that I think he cannot be quite well.
Your guardian benefits from the best of health, and his gravity of demeanor is to be complimented in one so extremely young as he is. I don't know one who has a greater sense of duty and responsibility than he.
I suppose that is why he often looks a little bored when we hear it together.
Cecily, I'm surprised at you. Mr. Webbing has many troubles in his life. Idle frivolity it would be out of place in his conversation. Do not forget how anxious he is about that poor, unfortunate young man, his brother.
I wish he would allow that unfortunate young man, his brother, to come out here sometimes. We might have good influence over him, Miss Prism. I know you certainly would. You know German and geology. Things of that kind influence him very much.
Not sure that even I could have any sort of influence on a character as, by his own brother's admission, irretrievably weak and vacillating. Not even sure I would want to reclaim him. Not at all in favor of modern society's mania for turning every bad person into good at a moment's notice. As a man sows, so let him reap. Cecily, put away your diary. I don't even know why you should want to keep a diary at all.
I keep a diary in order to enter the wonderful secrets of my life. If I didn't write them down, I'd probably forget all about them.
Memory, dear Cecily, is a diary dictionary of our things.
Yes, but it usually chronicles the things that have never happened and couldn't possibly have happened. I believe that memory is responsible for nearly all of the 3-volume novels the movie sends us.
Do not speak sparingly of 3-volume novels, dear. I read one myself in my younger days.
Did you really, Miss Prism? Oh, how wonderfully clever you are. I hope it did not end happily. I do not like novels that end happily. They depress me so much.
The good and the happy, the bad and happy, that is what fiction means.
I suppose so. But it seems very unfair. And was your novel ever published?
Alas, no. It was abandoned. And I mean that in the sense of lost or misplaced. Now, child, on to your studies. This conversation is profitless.
But I see dear Dr. Choswell coming up the garden.
Dr. Chasuble, this is indeed a pleasure.
How are we this morning? Oh, Miss Prism, you are, I trust, well.
I'm afraid Miss Prism has just been complaining of a slight headache. I believe a short stroll would do the park and do her
inattentive.
Oh, I'm afraid I am.
Oh, that is strange. Were I fortunate enough to be Miss Prism's pupil, I would hang upon her lips and... Oh, no, I was speaking metaphorically, you see. My metaphor was drawn from the bees. Mr. Worthing, I suppose, is not returned from town yet?
We do not expect it back until Monday afternoon.
Yes, he does usually like to spend his Sundays in London. He's not one of those whose sole aim is enjoyment, as by all accounts such an unfortunate young man his brother seems to be. But I must not disturb the Giriam, a pupil any longer.
Again, doctor. My name is Letitia.
A classical illusion, Miss Prism, merely drawn from the pagan authors. But I should see you both, no doubt, at even song.
I'm the doctor. I think I will take that stroll with you. I feel I do have a headache after all. The walk will do it good.
Oh, with pleasure, Miss Prism, with pleasure. You might go as far as schools and back.
That would be delightful. Cecily, you will read your political economy in my absence. The chapter on the decline of the rupee you may omit is a bit too sensational. I find these metallic problems do have their melodramatic side.
Horrid political economy, horrid geography, horrid German.
Mr. Ernest Wilde! He's just coming over from the station. He has put his luggage with him. You also want to this coat, huh?
Mr. Ernest Worthing before the Albany Doctor.
Uncle Jack's brother! Did you tell him that Mr. Worthing was in town?
Yes, miss, but he seemed very much disappointed. I mentioned to him that you and Miss Prism were in the garden. He said he was very anxious to speak with you privately for a moment.
Right, ask Mr. Ernest Worthing to come out here. And you had best speak to a housekeeper about a room.
Yes, miss.
I've never met a really wicked person before. I'm rather frightened. I'm so afraid that he will look just like everyone else.
He does.
You are my little cousin Cecily, I'm sure.
You must be under some strange mistake.
I'm not little. In fact, I believe I'm more than usually tall for my age. But yes, I am your cousin Cecily. You, I see from your card, are Uncle Jack's brother. My cousin, Ernest. My wicked cousin, Ernest.
You mustn't think me wicked, cousin Cecily. I'm not really that wicked.
If you are not, then you have certainly been deceiving us all in a very inexcusable manner. I do hope that you have not been leading a double life, pretending to be wicked and actually being really good all the time. That would be hypocrisy.
Well, of course, I have been rather reckless.
I'm glad to hear it.
And now that you mention the subject, I have also been very bad in my own small way.
I do not think that you should sound so bad now. Though I'm sure it was perfectly pleasant.
Well, it is much more pleasant being here with you.
I do not know how you could be here at all. Uncle Jack won't be back until Monday afternoon.
Well, that disappoints me greatly, but I have to be on I have to leave by the first train on Monday morning. I have a very important business arrangement that I am more than eager to miss.
Did you miss it anywhere but in London?
Oh, no. The appointment is in London.
Well, I know, of course, how important it is not to keep a business engagement if one wants to retain any sense of the beauty of life. But I still think you should wait until Uncle Jack gets back. I want to speak to you about your immigrating.
My what?
You're immigrating. He's gone to buy your outfit.
Well, I certainly wouldn't trust Jack with picking up my outfits. He has no taste in neckties at all.
I don't think he will be requiring a necktie. He's sending you to Australia.
Australia? I'd sooner die.
We said at dinner on Wednesday night that you would have to choose between this world, the next world, and Australia.
Well, the accounts that I have heard of Australia and the next world aren't particularly encouraging. This world is good enough for me, Cousin Cecily.
Yes, but are you good enough for it?
Well, that I'm afraid I'm not. That's why I want you to reform me, if you have the time, that is.
I'm afraid I've no time this afternoon.
Well, then would you mind me reforming myself?
It is rather quixotic of you, but I think you should try.
Well, I feel better already.
You're looking a little worse.
Oh, that's because I'm hungry.
How thoughtless of me. I should have remembered that when one is going to be leading an entirely new life, one requires regular and wholesome meals. Won't you come in?
Thank you, but might I have a buttonhole first? I never have an appetite unless I have a buttonhole first.
A marital meal?
Oh, no, I'd sooner a pink rose.
Why?
Well, because you are like a pink rose, Cousin Cecily.
I do not think that it can be right for you to talk to me like that. Miss Prism never says such things to me.
Well, then Miss Prism is a short-sighted old fool. You are the prettiest girl I've ever seen.
Miss Prism says all good looks are a snare.
A snare that any sensible man would love to be caught in.
No, I don't think I'd care to catch a sensible man. I should have known to speak to him about.
You are much too much of a woman, Chasuble. I think you should get married. This is what I understand, but a woman could never.
Oh, believe me, I don't observe so near logistic the phrase. The precept as well as the word. The practice of the primitive church was distinctly against matrimony.
That is precisely why the primitive church has not lasted up into the present day. What you do not understand, dear doctor, is that by perpetually remaining single, a man converts himself into a permanent public temptation. Men should be more careful. The act of celibacy can lead weaker vessels astray.
Oh, but is a man not equally attractive when married?
Oh, no married man is attractive, except to his wife.
And often I have been told, not even to her.
However, that depends upon the intellectual sympathies of the man. Maturity can be depended upon. Rightness is to be trusted, doctor. Young women are green. I was speaking horticulturally, of course. My metaphor was taken for fruits. Where is Cecily?
Yes, perhaps she followed us to the schools.
Mr. Wilde?
Oh, Mr. Wilde.
Mr. Wilde, this is indeed a surprise. We did not expect you back until Monday afternoon.
I returned sooner than I expected. Dr. Chasuble, I hope you're well.
Dear Mr. Worthing, I do hope that this garb of woe does not betoken some terrible calamity.
My brother.
Still leading his life of pleasure.
Dead?
Your brother Ernest dead.
Yes, quite dead.
What a lesson for him. I trust he will profit by it.
Oh, dear Mr. Worthing, you have my most sincere condolence, sir. You have at least the consolation of knowing that you were always the most generous and forgiving of brothers.
Ernest had his many faults, but still a sad blow.
Yes, very, very sad indeed, sir. But were you with him at the end?
No, furniture at the Grand Hotel.
I see. Was the cause of death mentioned?
A quite severe chill, it seems.
As a man sows, so shall he be.
Charity, dear Miss Prism, charity! Oh, none of us are perfect. I myself am peculiarly susceptible to drought, but that in any case, would the interment be taking place here?
No. He seems to have expressed a desire to be buried in Paris.
In Paris, you say? Oh, well, I feel that hardly points to any very serious state of mind at the last, but you would, no doubt, wish for me to make some slight allusion to this tragic domestic affliction next Sunday. My sermon on the meaning of the manna in the wilderness. It can be adapted to almost any occasion, but joyful or, in the present case, distressing. Yes, I have preached it at harvest celebrations, christenings, confirmations, days of humiliation, and festival days. The last time I delivered it was... the cathedral. It was part of a charity sermon on behalf of the Society for the Prevention of Discontent amongst the upper orders. Well, the bishop who was present was much struck by many of the analogies I drew.
That reminds me, Dr. Charles, when you mentioned christenings, I think, did you not? Well, I suppose then that you know how to christen. I mean, you are continually christening, are you not?
Oh, unfortunately, that is his most constant duty in this parish. I have often spoken to the poorer classes on the matter, but they do not seem to know what thrift means.
Well, was there any particular infant in whom you were interested, Mr. Worthing? Your brother was, I believe, unmarried, was he not?
Oh, yes.
Most people interested in Italian pleasure usually are.
No, but the fact is, dear doctor, that it is not for any infant at all. But you see, I'm quite fond of children, however. But no. The fact is, I would like to christen myself this afternoon if you've nothing better to do.
Well, surely, Mr. Worthing, you've been christened already.
I don't remember anything about it.
Would you have any doubts on the subject?
I certainly intend to have. Oh, but I don't know if the thing will make you uncomfortable at all, or maybe you think I'm a little too old now.
No, not at all. The sprinkling and, indeed, the immersion of adults is a perfectly canonical practice.
The immersion.
But you need no apprehension, dear sir. A sprinkling is all that would be necessary, or, indeed, I believe, advisable. For our weather is so changeable. But what time would you wish for the ceremony to be performed?
Oh, I may drop around about 5. That suits you?
Perfectly. Oh, in fact, I have 2 similar ceremonies to perform later today at that time. A case of twins, you see, that occurred very recently in one of the outlying cottages on your own estate. Oh, Jenkins the carter, Ernest, hard-working man.
I don't see much fun being christened alongside babies. No, that would be childish. Will the court pass by too?
Admirably. And now, dear Mr. Worthing, I will not intrude any longer into a house of sorrow, but I would, merely beg you, not be too much bowed down by grief, dear sir. It will seem to us that trials are often blessings in disguise.
This seems to me a blessing of an extremely obvious kind.
Uncle Jack! Oh, I'm so pleased to see you back.
Oh, my child!
Uncle Jack, do look happy. You look as if you've had a toothache, and I've got such a wonderful surprise for you. Who do you think is in the dining room? Your brother! Your brother, Ernest! He arrived about half an hour ago.
That's absurd! I don't have a brother.
Oh, don't say that. Oh,
down from town to tell you how very sorry I am for all of the trouble that I've caused you. And to tell you that I intend to lead a better life in the future.
Uncle Jack, you are not going to refuse your own brother's hand.
Nothing will induce me to take his hand. I think his coming down here is absurd. Well, why?
Oh, don't say that. There is some good in everyone. Ernest has just been telling me about his poor invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury, whom he goes to visit so very often. And surely there must be much good in one who is kind to an invalid and leaves the pleasures of London to sit by a bed of pain.
Oh, he's been talking about Bunbury, has he?
Yes, he's told me all about one poor Mr. Bunbury in his terrible state of health.
Well, I should make quite certain that he doesn't talk about Bunbury about anybody else. It is enough to drive one perfectly frantic.
Though I admit that all of the faults were on my side, I must say that Brother John's coldness to me is peculiarly painful. Especially since this is the first time that I've come here.
Uncle Jack, if you do not shake your brother's hand, I shall never forgive you.
Never.
Never, never, never.
This is the last time that I will ever do it.
Oh, it is pleasant, is it not, to see so perfect a reconciliation? That, I believe we might leave the two brothers together. Oh, come.
Cecily, you will come with us.
Certainly, Miss Prism. My little task of reconciliation is over.
You have done a beautiful action today, dear child.
We need not thus of the editorial judgments.
I feel very happy.
He's gathered here at once. I don't allow any Bunbury here.
I've unpacked Mr. Ernest's things and put them in the room next to your own. I suppose that is all right, sir.
What?
Mr. Ernest's luggage, sir. I have unpacked it and I put it in the room next to your own.
His luggage.
Yes, sir. 3 pimentos, a dressing case, 2 hat boxes, and a large luncheon basket.
I'm afraid that I can't stay longer than a week this time.
Merriman ordered the dog out at once. Mr. Ernest has been suddenly called back to town.
Yes, sir.
What a fearful liar you are, Jack. I haven't been called back to town at all.
Oh, yes, you have.
But I haven't heard anybody call my name.
Duty as a gentleman calls you back.
My duties as a gentleman have never interfered with my pleasures in the smallest degree.
You quite understand that.
Well, Cecily is a dear.
You are not to speak of Miss Carter like that. I don't like it.
Well, I don't like your clothes. Why don't you go up and change? You look perfectly ridiculous in them. Why it is so absurd to be in deep mourning for a man who's really going to be staying with you in your house for a week. I call it grotesque.
You are not staying in my house as a guest or as anything else. You've got to catch the 4:05 train back to town.
I certainly won't leave you. Not while you're in such deep mourning. I would think it most unkind.
I'll change my clothes, then will you leave?
Yes, yes, if you are quick about it. I've never seen somebody take so long to dress with such little result.
Your vanity is absurd, your conduct an outrage, and your very presence in my flower garden absurd. Having said that, you've got to catch the 4:05 train back to town, and I wish you a pleasant journey. This Bunbury, as you call it, has not been a great success to you.
I think it's been a great success. I'm in love with Cecily, and that's everything. But I must go find her before I go and make arrangements for another Bunbury. Oh, there she is.
I just came back to water the roses. I thought you were with Uncle Jack.
He is gone to order the dog park for me.
Oh, is he going to take you for a nice drive?
No, he's going to send me away.
Oh. So then have we got divorced?
I'm afraid so. What a painful parting it will be.
It is always painful to part with anyone when one has just been introduced. The absence of old friends one can endure with equanimity. But even a momentary separation from anyone whom one has just met is almost unbearable.
Thank you.
Your card is at the door, sir.
It can wait there then for 5 minutes.
Yes, miss.
Cecily, I hope that I don't offend you if I state quite openly and frankly that you seem to me to be the visible personification of absolute perfection.
I think your frankness does you great credit, Ernest. If you allow, I shall write the remarks into my diary.
Do you really keep a diary? Well, why, I'd give anything to read it. May I?
Oh, no. You see, it is simply a young girl's record of her own thoughts and impressions, and consequently meant for publication. I do hope when it appears in novel form, that you will order a copy. But pray, Ernest, don't stop. I delight in taking down some dictation. I have reached absolute perfection. Do go on, I'm quite ready for more. Right, Ernest, do not cough. When one is dictating, one should speak fluently and not talk. Besides, I don't know how to spell cough.
Cecily, ever since my eyes first looked upon your wonderful, incomparable beauty, I have dared to love you wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly.
I do not think that you should tell me that you love me wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly. Hopelessly doesn't make much sense, does it?
Cecily.
The dog cart is still waiting, sir.
Well, tell it to come around next week at the same hour.
Yes, sir.
Uncle Jack would be very much annoyed if he knew you were staying around until next week at the same hour.
Well, I don't care about Jack. I don't care about anybody in this whole world except for you, Cecily. I love you. You will marry me, won't you?
You silly boy, of course. Why, we have been engaged for the last 3 months.
For the last 3 months.
Yes, it'll be 3 months exactly on Thursday.
But, my dear, how did we become engaged?
Well, when Uncle Jack first confessed to us that he had a younger brother who was very wicked and bad, you, of course, have formed the chief topic of conversation between myself and Miss Prism. And, of course, a man who is much talked about is always very attractive. One feels there must be something in him after all. Dare say it was foolish of me, but I fell in love with you, Ernest.
Darling. And when was our engagement actually settled?
On the 14th of February last. Worn out by your entire ignorance of my existence, I determined to end the matter one way or the other. And after a long struggle with myself, I accepted you under that dear old tree over there. The next day I went to town, and I got this little ring in your name, and this is the little bangle with the true lover's knot I promised you always to wear.
Did I buy you this? It sure does look pretty, though, doesn't it?
Yes, you wonderfully good taste, Ernest. It is the excuse I've always given you for your leading such a bad life. And this is the box in which I keep all of your dear letters.
But my dear Cecily, I've never sent you any letters.
You need hardly remind me of that, Ernest. I remember only too well that I was forced to write your letters for you. We have to read it sometimes often.
Oh, do let me read them.
Now, that would make you far too conceited. The 3 you wrote me after I broke off our engagement are so beautiful and so badly spelled that even now I can hardly read them without crying a little.
My dear sweet Cecily, did we ever actually break up?
Yes, on
But why would you break it off? What have I done, Cecily? I have done nothing. Why, it distresses me greatly to hear that you would break it off, particularly whenever the weather was so, charming.
It would hardly have been a real serious engagement if it had been broken off at least once. But I forgave you before the week was out.
What a perfect angel you are.
Here's your romantic voice. I hope your hair grows naturally. Does it?
Yes, darling, yes. With a little help from others.
I'm so glad.
You will never end our engagement again, will you, Cecily?
I don't think I could now that I've actually met you. Besides, there is the matter of your name.
Of course, my name.
You mustn't laugh at me, darling. But it had always been a girlish dream of mine to love someone whose name was Ernest. There's something in that name that seems to inspire absolute confidence. I pity any poor married woman whose husband is not called Ernest.
But, my dear child, do you mean to say that you couldn't love me if I had some other name?
But what name?
Oh, any name you like. Algernon, for instance.
But I do not like the name Algernon.
Why, my own dear, sweet, and loving little darling, I don't see why you should object to the name of Algernon. Why, it isn't a bad name at all. Rather, it is a very aristocratic name. Why, half of the chaps they give at bankruptcy court are named Algernon. But seriously, Cecily, if my name were Algie, couldn't you love me?
I might respect you, Ernest. I might admire your character. But I'm afraid I should not be able to give you my undivided attention.
Cecily, I suppose that your rector here is thoroughly experienced in the practicing of the rites and ceremonials of the church.
Oh yes, Dr. Constable is the most learned man. He has never read a single book, so you can imagine how much he knows.
Well, then I must go see him on a most important christening. I mean, most important business.
Oh.
I shan't be away for half an hour.
Considering that we have only just met and that we've been engaged since February the 14th, I think it rather hard that you would leave me for so long a period as half an hour. Won't you make it 20 minutes?
I will be back in no time.
What an impetuous boy he is. I like his hair so much. I shall enter his proposal into my diary.
Miss Fairfax has just called to see Mr. Worthing on very important business, Miss Fairfax states.
Is it Mr. Worthing in his library?
Mr. Worthing went in the direction of the rectory some time ago.
Pray, ask the lady to come out here. Mr. Worthing is sure to be back soon. And you can bring some tea.
Yes, miss.
Miss Fairfax, I suppose one of the many good elderly women who are associated with Uncle Jack is philanthropy. I don't quite like women who are interested in philanthropy. I think it's so forward of them.
Miss Fairfax.
Pray, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew, what a very sweet name. Something tells me we're going to be great friends. I already like you more than I can possibly say, and my first impression of people is never wrong.
How nice of you to like me so much after knowing me for such a comparatively short time. Pray, sit down.
I may call you Cecily, may I not?
With pleasure,
And you will always call me Gwendolen, won't you?
if you wish.
Then that is all quite settled now, is it not?
I hope so.
Perhaps now might be a favorable opportunity for my mentioning who I am. My father is Lord Bracknell. I suppose you've never heard of Papa.
I don't think so.
Well, outside the family circle, Papa is entirely unknown. I think that is quite as it ought to be. The home seems to me to be the proper sphere for the man, And certainly, once a man begins to neglect his domestic duties, he becomes painfully effeminate. And I don't like that. It makes men so very attractive. Cecily, Mama, whose views on education are remarkably strict, has brought me up to be extremely short-sighted. It is part of her system. So, may I look at you through my glasses?
Pray do. I am very fond of being looked at.
You're here on a short visit, I suppose.
Oh no, I live here.
Really? Your mother, no doubt, or another female relative of advanced years must reside here also?
Oh no, I have no mother, nor in fact any relations.
Indeed.
My dear guardian, with the assistance of Miss Prism, has the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I am Mr. Worthing's ward.
Oh! He did not mention to me he had a ward. How secretive of him. He grows more interesting hourly. I'm not sure, however, that the news inspires feelings of unmixed delight. I'm very fond of you, Cecily. I've liked you ever since I met you. But I am bound to state that now that I know you're Mr. Worthing's ward, I can't help but express a wish you were, well, a little older than you seem to be, and not quite so alluring in appearance. In fact, if I may speak candidly.
Pray do. I believe that when anyone has anything unpleasant to say, one should always be quite candid.
Well, to speak with perfect candor, Cecily, I wish you were fully 42 and more than usually plain for your age. Ernest has a strong, upright nature. He's the very soul of truth and honor. Disloyalty would be as impossible to him as deception. But even men of the noblest possible moral character are extremely susceptible to the influence of the physical charms of others. Modern, no less than ancient history provides us with many painful references of what I referred to. If not, history would be quite unreadable.
I beg your pardon, Gwendolen, but did you say Ernest?
Yes.
Oh, but it's not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is my guardian. It is his brother, his elder brother.
Ernest never mentioned to me that he had a brother.
I'm sorry to say they have not been on good terms for a long time.
Ah, that accounts for it. And now that I think of it, I've never heard any man mention his brother. The subject seems distasteful to most men. Cecily, you've lifted a load from my mind. I was growing almost anxious. It would have been terrible if a cloud had come over a friendship like ours, would it not? But you're quite certain that it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is your guardian?
Quite sure. In fact, I'm going to be his.
I beg your pardon?
Dearest Gwendolen, there is no reason I should make a secret of it to you. Our county newspaper is sure to chronicle the fact next week. Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
My darling Cecily, I think there must be some slight error. Mr. Ernest Worthing is engaged to me. It'll appear in the newspapers on Saturday at the latest.
I'm afraid you must be under some misconception, dearest Gwendolen. Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
It is certainly very curious, for he asked me to be his wife yesterday afternoon at 5:30. If you care to verify the incident, pray do so. I never travel without my diary. One should always have something sensational to read on the train. I'm so sorry, dear Cecily, if it is any disappointment to you, but I'm afraid I have the prior claim.
It would distress me more than you know, dearest Gwendolen, if it has caused you any mental or physical anguish. However, I feel bound to point out that since he proposed to you, he has clearly changed his mind.
If the entrapped in any foolish promise, I will consider it my duty to rescue him at once, and with a firm hand.
Whatever unfortunate entanglement my dear boy may have gotten himself into, I shall never reproach him with it after we are married.
Do you allude to me, Miss Cardew, as an entanglement? You are presumptuous. A decision of this kind it becomes more than a moral duty to speak one's mind. It becomes a pleasure.
Do you suggest, Miss Fairfax, that I entrapped Ernest into an engagement? How dare you? This is not the time to wear the shallow mask of manners. When I see a spade, I call it a spade.
I'm glad to say I've never seen a spade. It is obvious our social spheres have been widely different.
Shall I leave the tea here as usual, miss?
Yes, as usual.
Victoria.
Are there any interesting walks in the vicinity, Miss Cardew?
Yes, Miss Fairfax. From the top of one of the hills quite close, one can see 5 counties.
Huh, 5 counties? I don't think I should like that. I hate crowds.
I suppose that is why you live in town?
That's a well-kept garden you have here, Miss Cardew.
So glad you like it, Miss Fairfax.
I had no idea there were flowers in the country.
Why, yes, Miss Fairfax. Flowers are as common here as people are in London.
Personally, I cannot imagine why anybody can manage to exist in the country. If anybody who is anybody does. The country always bores me to death.
Ah, this is what the newspapers refer to as agricultural depression, is it not? The aristocracy are suffering much from it at present. There's almost an epidemic amongst them, I've been told. May I offer you some tea, Miss Fairfax?
Thank you, detestable girl, but I require tea.
Sugar?
No, thank you. Sugar's no longer fashionable.
Cake or muffins?
Muffins. Cake is rarely seen in the best houses nowadays.
Hand that to Miss Fairfax.
You have filled my tea with lots of sugar, and though I distinctly asked for muffins, you have given me cake. I am known for the gentleness of my disposition and my extraordinarily sweet nature. But I warn you, Miss Cardew, you may go too far.
To save my poor, innocent, trusting boy from the machinations of any other girl, there are no lengths to which I would not go.
From the moment I met you, I distrusted you. I felt you were false and deceitful. I am never deceived in such matters. My first impression of people is invariably right.
It seems to me, Miss Fairfax, that I happen to be trespassing on your valuable time. No doubt you have other calls of a similar character to make in the neighborhood.
Gwendolen, darling.
Oh, Ernest, my own Ernest. A moment. May I ask if you are engaged to this young lady?
Why, Cecily, of course not. What's such an idea to offer to me?
Thank you, you may.
I knew there must be some misunderstanding, Miss Fairfax. You see, the man whose arm is at present around your waist is my guardian, Mr. John Worthing.
I beg your pardon.
This is Jack!
Oh!
Here is Ernest.
My own love.
One moment, dear. Can you tell me, are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
To what young lady? Oh, good heavens, Wilde.
To Gwendolen.
Of course not. Don't put that idea into your pretty little head.
Thank you. You may.
could deny nearly anything if I wanted to. I must admit that, yes, my name is John. It's been John for quite some time.
Gross deception has been practiced on the both of us.
My poor wounded Cecily.
My sweet ones, Gwendolen.
You'll call me sister, will you not?
I would not like to be allowed to ask my guardian.
An admirable idea. Mr. Worthing, there is one question I would like to be permitted to put to you. Where is your brother Ernest? We are both engaged to be married to your brother Ernest, so it is of some importance to us to know where your brother Ernest is at present.
Gwendolen, Cecily, it pains me very greatly to be forced to speak the truth. In fact, I think this is the first time in my life that I've been reduced to such a painful position. However, I can tell you quite frankly that I have no brother Ernest. I really have no brother at all, not even of any kind. And I certainly don't intend on having one in the future.
No brother at all?
None.
Had you never a brother of any kind?
Not even of any kind.
I'm afraid it's quite clear, Cecily, that neither of us is engaged to be married to anyone.
It's not a very pleasant position for a young girl to find herself in, is it?
Let us go into that house. They will hardly venture to come after us there.
No, men are so cowardly, aren't they?
This ghastly state of things which will bumbling, I suppose.
Yes, and what a perfectly wonderful Bunbury it's been. This may be the most wonderful Bunbury I've ever had in my life.
You had no right whatsoever to Bunbury here.
Oh, that is absurd.
One has the right to Bunbury wherever one wants.
Any serious Bunbury knows that.
Serious Bunburys, good heavens.
One must be serious about something if one wants any amusement out of life. And I just so happen to be serious about Bunbury. What you're serious about, I haven't the remotest idea. About everything, I should fancy. You do have the most trivial of natures about you.
The only small satisfaction that I can gather in this whole wretched business is that your friend Bunbury is quite exploded. You won't be able to run up to the country near as often as you used to do, Algie. You never did mean to.
Well, your brother is a little color.
Satisfy you.
Destruction of property is not normally my forte. But as I was saying, your brother is a little off-colored too, isn't he, dear Jack? You won't be able to run off to London quite so frequently as your wicked custom once was, and that isn't a bad thing either.
As for your conduct toward Miss Cardew, I must say that you're taking in such a sweet, simple, innocent girl like that is absolutely inexcusable. Not to mention the fact that she is my ward.
And there can be no possible defense for your deceiving a brilliant, clever, thoroughly experienced young lady like Miss Fairfax. To say nothing of the fact that she is my cousin.
I am in love with Gwendolen. I want to be married to her, that is all.
And I wanted to be engaged to Cecily. I adored her.
There is no chance of you ever marrying Miss Cardew.
And I don't see much likelihood of your being united with Miss Fairfax either.
Well, that is no business of yours.
If it were my business, I wouldn't speak about it. It's quite vulgar to speak about only people like stockbrokers do that, merely at dinner parties.
I don't understand how you can sit there calmly eating muffins when we were in such terrible trouble. I think you perfectly heartless.
Well, I can't eat muffins in an agitated manner. The butter would get all over my cuffs. When one is eating muffins, one must do it quite calmly.
I think your eating muffins at all under these circumstances makes you heartless.
When I'm in trouble, eating is the only thing that consoles me. Indeed, when I am in really great trouble, as anybody who knows me intimately will tell you, I refuse everything except for food and drink. And at the present moment, I am eating muffins because I am unhappy. And besides, I am particularly fond of muffins.
Doesn't mean you have to eat them all in that greedy way.
Oh, I wish you'd take the tea cake. I don't like tea cake.
own muffins in his own garden.
But you have just said that it was perfectly harmless to eat muffins.
No, I said it was perfectly heartless of you under the circumstances. It is a different thing for me entirely.
Yes, and yet the muffins stay the same.
Algernon, why don't you leave?
That is absurd. You can't ask me to leave yet. I haven't had my dinner yet. That's absurd. I never go without dinner. And nobody ever does, except for vegetarians and people like that. And besides, I will just reiterate that Dr. Chasuble to be christened at 5:45 under the name of Ernest.
My dear fellow, the sooner you give that up, the better. I have made reservations myself with Dr. Chasuble to be christened at 5:30. I will be naturally christened under the name of Ernest, as Gwendolen would have it. We can both be Ernest, that's absurd. Besides, I have every right to be christened if I so choose. There is absolutely no proof that I ever was. In fact, I think it quite probable that I ever was. Dr. Chasuble agrees. You've already been christened. You cannot be christened again.
Yes, but I haven't been christened in years.
But you have been christened, and that is the important thing.
Quite so. So I know that my constitution can stand it. Whereas if you are quite uncertain about your ever being christened, I must say, it may be rather dangerous that you're venturing on it now. Why, it may make you feel very unwell. You need hardly forget that somebody very closely connected with you was very nearly carried off in Paris this week by a severe chill.
You said yourself that a severe chill was not hereditary.
It used to be, I know, but I dare say that it is now. Science is always making wonderful improvements in things.
That is nonsense.
Jack, you're at the muffins again. I wish that you wouldn't. There's only 2 left. And besides, I told you that I was particularly fond of muffins.
Well, I hate tea cake.
Then why on earth would you serve them to guests? What ideas of hospitality you have.
Algernon, I have asked you to leave. I do not want you here. Why don't you go?
I haven't quite finished my tea yet. And besides, there's still 1 more muffin left.
This dignified silence seems to have produced an unpleasant effect.
A most distasteful one.
But we will not be the first to speak.
Certainly not.
Mr. Worthing, there is something very particular I must ask you. Much depends on your reply.
Gwendolen, your common sense is invaluable. Mr. Moncrief, kindly answer me the following question. Why is it that you pretended to be my guardian's brother?
So that I might have the opportunity of meeting.
That is a satisfactory explanation, does it not?
Yes, dear, if you can believe him.
I don't. I do not affect the wonderful beauty of his answer.
True. In matters of grave importance, style, not sincerity, is the vital thing. Mr. Worthing, what explanation can you give Was it in order that you might have the opportunity to come up to town to see me as often as possible?
Can you doubt it, Miss Mary?
I have the greatest doubts on the subject, but I intend to crush them. This is no moment for German skepticism. Their answers sound quite satisfactory, especially Mr. Worthing's. Seems to have the stamp of truth on it.
I am more than content with what Mr. Moncrief said. His voice alone seems to inspire one with absolute credulity.
So you think we should forget them?
Yes. I mean, no.
True, I had forgotten. There are principles at stake that one cannot surrender. Which one of us will tell them? The task is not a pleasant one.
Could we not both speak at the same time?
An excellent idea. I nearly always speak at the same time as other people. Will you take time for me?
Certainly. Your Christian names are still an insufferable barrier. That is all.
Our Christian names, is that all? We're going to be christened this afternoon.
For my sake, you're prepared to do this terrible thing.
I am.
Are we ready to face this fearful ordeal?
I am.
How absurd to talk of the equality of the sexes. Where questions of self-sacrifice are concerned, men are infinitely beyond us.
We are.
They have moments of physical courage in which we women know nothing. Darling!
Darling!
What does this mean?
Merely that I am engaged to be married to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Come here. Sit down. Sit down immediately. Hesitation of any kind is a sign of mental decay in the young, of physical weakness in the old. Apprised, sir, of my daughter's sudden flight by her trusty maid, whose confidence I purchased by means of a small coin. I followed at once by luggage train. Her unhappy mother, I am glad to say, is under the impression she is attending a more than usually lengthy lecture at the University Extension Scheme on the influence of permanent income on thought. I do not propose to undeceive him. Indeed, I have never undeceived him on any question. I would consider it wrong. However, you clearly understand that from this moment on, all communication between yourself and my daughter are to cease immediately from this moment. On this point, as indeed on all points, I am firm.
Lady Bracknell, Gwendolen and I are engaged to be married.
You are nothing of the kind, sir. Now as regards Algernon. Algernon!
Yes, I'm Augusta.
May I ask if it is in this house that your invalid friend Bunbury resides?
Bunbury? No. Bunbury doesn't live here. But Bunbury is somewhere else at present. In fact, Bunbury is dead.
Dead? When did this Mr. Bunbury die? His death must have been extremely sudden.
Oh, I killed Bunbury this afternoon. I mean, Bunbury died this afternoon.
What did he die of?
Bunbury? Oh, he was quite exploded.
Exploded? Was he the victim of a revolutionary outrage? I was not aware that Mr. Bunbury was at all interested in social legislation. If so, he is well punished for his morbidity.
My dear sweet old Augusta, I mean that he was found out. I mean that doctors found out that he could not live, and so Bunbury died.
He seems to have had great confidence in the opinion of his physicians. I am glad, however, that he came to some definite course of action and acted under proper medical advice. And now that we are finally rid of this Mr. Bunbury, may I ask, Mr. Worthing, who is that young person whose hand mine
That young lady is Miss Cecily Cardew, my ward.
Aunt Augusta, Cecily and I are to be engaged.
I beg your pardon.
Algernon and I are engaged to be married, Lady Bracknell.
I do not know if there is anything peculiarly exciting in the air in this particular part of Hertfordshire, but the number of engagements that go on seem to me above the proper average that statistics have laid down for our guidance. I think some preliminary inquiries on my part would not be out of place. Mr. Wilde, may I ask if Miss Cardew was at all connected to any of the larger railway stations in London? I merely desire information. Until yesterday, I had no idea that there were any families or persons whose origin was a terminus.
Miss Cardew is the granddaughter of the old Mr. Thomas Cardew of 149 SW, the Ross Park, the Dorking, Surrey, and the Score in Fifeshire.
That is not unsatisfactory. Three addresses always inspires great confidence even in tradesmen. What proof have I of their authenticity?
I have carefully preserved the court records of the time period, Lady Bracknell. They are open to your inspection.
I have known some strange errors in that publication.
Okay. Miss Cardew's family solicitors are Markby, Markby, and Markby.
Markby, Markby, and Markby. A firm of the highest position in their profession. Indeed, one of the Mrs. Markbys, I have been told, dines at evening parties. So far, I am satisfied.
I also have record, you will be very glad to hear it, record of Miss Cardew's birth, baptism, whooping cough, vaccination, registration, and confirmation. Also, her vaccination against the measles, both the English and the German varieties.
A life crowded with incident, I see. Although maybe a bit too exciting for a young girl. I am not myself in favor of premature experiences. Gwendolen, the time approaches for our departure. We have not a moment to lose. I had better ask Mr. Wilde as a matter of form if Miss Cardew has any little fortune.
Oh, Miss Cardew has about £130,000 in the funds or so. Goodbye, Lady Bracknell! How wonderful it has been to see you!
A moment, Mr. Wilde. £140,000? And in the funds? It seems to me Miss Cardew shows a very attractive quality. As few girls of the present day have any really solid qualities, any of the qualities that last and improve with time. We live, I regret to say, in an age of surfaces. Come over here, dear. Pretty child. Your dress is sadly simple, and your hair seems to me as nature might have left it. But that can all be altered soon enough. A thoroughly experienced French maid produces really marvelous results in a brief space of time. I remember recommending one to young Lady Lansing, and after 3 months her own husband did not know her.
And after 6 months, nobody did.
Turn around now. No, the side view is what I want. Yes, just as I expected. There are distinct social possibilities in your profile. The chair a little higher here. The two weak points in our age are its want of principle and its want of profile. Style largely depends upon the way the chin is worn, which is worn very high at the moment. Algernon?
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
There are distinct social possibilities in Miss Cardew's profile.
Cecily is the dearest, sweetest, most pretty woman I've ever seen in my entire life, and I don't care 2 pence about social possibilities.
Never speak disrespectfully of society, Algernon. Only people who can't get into it do that. Dear child, you must be aware that Algernon has only his debts to depend upon, but I do not approve of mercenary marriages. When I married Lord Bracknell, I had no fortune of any kind, but I never dreamed of letting that stand in my way. Well, I suppose I must give my consent.
Oh, thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Cecily, you may kiss me.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell.
And you may address me as Aunt Augusta for the future.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
I think the marriage should take place quite soon.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
I am not myself in favor of
question. You see, Miss Cardew is my ward. As my ward, she cannot be married without my consent, at least until she becomes of age. That consent I absolutely decline to give.
Upon what grounds? Algernon is extremely, I may even say ostentatiously eligible young man. He has nothing, but he looks everything. What more could one desire?
Pains me greatly to tell you this, Lady Bracknell, that I don't approve much of his character. I suspect him of being untruthful.
Untruthful? My nephew Algernon? Impossible. He is an Oxonian.
I'm afraid that there can be absolutely no doubt about the matter. You see, this afternoon, during my temporary absence in London on a most important question of romance, he obtained admission into my home under the false pretense of being my brother. Under an assumed name, he drank, my butler has just told me, an entire pint of fine Perrier Jolet of Brut 82. A wine which I've been most especially reserving for myself. Continuing with this deceitful deception, he, in the span of a single afternoon, alienated the effects of my only ward. Subsequently, he stated tea where he devoured every single muffin! And what makes this all the more marvelous from the very first that I have no brother, that I have never had a brother, and that I don't intend to. Not even of any kind. I told you so myself yesterday afternoon.
Mr. Worthy, after careful consideration, I have decided to entirely overlook my nephew's conduct to you.
Oh, that is rather kind of you, Lady Bracknell. However, my own decision remains unaltered. I decline to give my consent.
Come over here. How old are you?
Well, I'm only really 18, but I always admit to 20 when I go to evening parties.
Oh, well, that's quite all right. You should always make some slight alteration. Women should never be quite accurate about their age. It looks so deceiving. 18 but admitted to 20 at dinner parties. Well, you are almost of age. So I will be free from your restraints of tutelage soon enough. So I think that we do not need your guardian's consent. It's not any matter of importance.
Pray, I beg your pardon for interrupting you again, Lady Bracknell, but I think it only fair to tell you that according to Miss Cardew's grandfather's will, she does not legally come of age until she is quite 35.
Grave objection. 35 is a very attractive age. Why, London society is full of women who have remained, by their own free choice, 35 for years. Lady Dumbleton is a case in point. To my own knowledge, she has been 35 ever since she reached the age of 40, which was many years ago now. So I do not see why our dear Cecily would not be even more attractive at the age that you say that she needs to be. There will be a large accumulation of property.
Algie, could you wait for me till I'm 35?
Of course I can. You know that I could.
Yes, I know. I felt instinctively. But I cannot wait all that time. I hate waiting 5 minutes for anyone. It always makes me rather cross. I know I'm not punctual myself. I always like punctuality in others. And waiting even to be married is quite out of the question.
But then what is to be done, Cecily?
I do not know, Mr. Moncrief.
Mr. Worthing, as Cecily has decided that she cannot wait until she is 35, a remark, I may say, shows a somewhat impatient nature. I would beg of you to reconsider your decision.
But Lady Bracknell, this decision is entirely in your own hands. For the moment that you consent to my marriage with Gwendolen, I will be more than happy to allow an alliance to be formed between your nephew and my ward.
What you propose, you must know, is out of the question.
Well then, I guess the only thing that any of us have to look forward to is a quite passionate celibacy.
That is not the destiny I propose for Gwendolen. Algernon can choose for himself. Come, dear, we have already missed 5, if not 6 trains. To miss any more might expose us to comment on the platform.
Yes, everything is quite ready for the christenings.
The christening, sir? Is that not somewhat premature?
Both of these gentlemen expressed a desire for immediate baptism.
At their age, the idea is grotesque and irreligious. Algernon will bid you to be baptized. I will not hear of such excesses. Lord Bracknell would be highly displeased if he knew that this was the way in which you wasted your time and money.
Am I to understand then that there to be no christenings at all this afternoon?
I'm afraid that as things are now, Dr. Charles, it wouldn't be of much practical value to either of us.
Oh, I am much grieved to hear such sentiments from you, Mr. Worthing. What? They savor the heretical views of the Anabaptists. Views that I might add that I have completely refuted in 4 of my public sermons. However, seeing as your group is one peculiarly secular, well, I shall return to the church at once. Yes, for indeed I have just been informed by the pew opener that for the last hour and a half that Miss Prism has been waiting for me in the vestry.
Miss Prism? Did I hear you mention a Miss Prism?
Oh, yes, Lady Bracknell, I am on my way to join her.
Pray allow me to detain you for a moment. This matter may prove of vital importance to Lord Bracknell and myself. Is this Miss Prism a female of repellent aspect remotely connected to education?
Why, she is the most cultivated of ladies. Oh, the very picture of respectability.
It is obviously the same person. May I ask, what position in your household she holds?
I am celibate, madam.
Lady Bracknell, Miss Prism has been, for the last 3 years, Miss Cardew's most esteemed governess and valued companion.
Well, despite what I hear of her, I must see her at once. Let her be sent for.
Oh, she approaches. She is nigh.
To Cannon, I was told to expect it in the vestry. I have been waiting there for you an hour and 3/4.
Prism? Come here, Prism. Prism, where is that baby?
Oh, baby.
28 years ago, Prism, you left Lord Bracknell's house, number 104 Upper Grosvenor Street, in charge of a perambulator that contained the baby of the male sex. You did not return. A few weeks later, after the elaborate investigations of the Metropolitan Police, the perambulator was discovered in a remote corner of Bayswater. It contained the manuscripts of a more than usually revolting novel of sentimentality. The baby was not there. Where is that baby?
Lady Bracknell, it is with shame that I admit I do not know. I only wish that I did. The plain facts of the case reads, on the morning of the day that you mentioned, the day that will forever be branded in my memory, I prepared as usual to take the baby out in his perambulator. I also had with me a rather old but capacious handbag in which I had intended to place a novel that I'd written in my few unoccupied hours. But in a moment of complete mental abstraction, for which I can never forgive myself for, I deposited the manuscript in the bassinet, and I put the baby in the handbag.
Where did you deposit this handbag?
Oh, do not ask me, Mr. Wilde.
Miss Prism, this is of no little importance to me. I demand to know where you deposited the handbag that contains the infant.
I left it in the cloakroom of a rather large railway station in London.
Which station?
Victoria. The Brighton one.
I must retire my work at once. Going to the newspaper waiting here for
If you're not too long, I'll wait here.
What do you suppose that this all means, Lady Bracknell?
I dare not even suspect are not supposed to occur. It is hardly considered a thing.
Uncle Jack seems strangely agitated.
Yes, your guardian has a rather emotional nature.
This noise is extremely unpleasant. It sounds as if you were having an argument. I dislike arguments of any kind. They are always vulgar and often convincing.
It is stop now.
I wish you would come to some sort of conclusion.
The suspense is terrible. I hope it will last. It appears to be mine. Look, here's the entry you received from the upsetting of an Oppie Street bus. Hey, my younger, happier days. Behind, see the stain? It occurred from the explosion of a temperance beverage. That happened in Williamson. The locks? The locks. My initials on the locks. I've forgotten in a moment of them. Forgotten I placed them there. Yes, this is most definitely my bag. I'm so pleased to have it so unexpectedly restored to me. It has been a great inconvenience being without it, I say this.
This more returns than just that handbag. I was the baby placed inside.
You? Yes.
Yes, oh mother!
That's the lie! I am not married!
Unmarried! Oh, I must admit that that's a quite serious blow, but then, who has the right to cast stones at one who has suffered? Cannot an act of repentance wipe out that of folly? Why should there be one law from heaven and another for women? Mother, I forgive you!
There is some error here. There's the lady. She can tell you who you really are.
Bravo. I hate to seem inquisitive, but would you please guide me to who I am?
The news I have to tell you may not altogether please you. You are the son of my poor sister, Mrs. Moncrief, and consequently, Algernon's elder brother.
Algernon's elder brother? But I do have a brother. Cecily, didn't I always tell you that I had a brother? Have you met my unfortunate brother? Have you met her? Miss Prism! This is my unfortunate brother. Gwendolen! My unfortunate brother! You have treated him with more respect than a future. You never treated me like a brother in all your life.
Well, not till today, old fellow, but I was out of practice.
My own! But wait! What are you? What is your Christian name now that you've become someone else?
Well, I have very nearly forgotten that fact. Well, I suppose that your decision on my name is irrevocable then.
I never change, except in my affections.
What a noble future you have, Gwendolen.
The matter had better be settled at once. Miss Aunt. At the time that I was placed in the handbag, had I already been christened?
Every luxury the money could buy, including christenings, had been lavished on you by your aunt and doting parents.
that I had been christened. That settles that, yes. But what's my Christian name? Please tell me the worst.
Being the eldest, you are naturally christened after your father.
But what was my father's Christian name?
Not at the present remember the general's Christian name. I have no doubt that he had one. He was eccentric, but only in later years, and that was due to the Indian climate, and marriage, and indigestion, and other things of that sort.
Algernon, can't you remember your father's Christian name?
My dear fellow, we were never even on speaking terms. He died before I was a year old.
I suppose his name would appear in the army registry period, would not?
The general was essentially a man of peace, except in his domestic life. No doubt that his name would appear in any military directory.
The military records, the last 50 years are here. Oh, these records should have been my constant study. All right, generals. Generals. Malin, Maxwell, Magley. Gosh, ghastly names I have. They makes me Moncrief. Lieutenant, 1840. Captain, Lieutenant Colonel, Colonel General, General, 1869. Christian names. Ernest. Gwendolen, didn't I always tell you my name was Ernest? Ernest. After all, it is naturally it is Ernest.
That is right. I remember now that the general was called Ernest. I knew I had a particular reason for disliking the name.
Ernest, my own Ernest. I felt from the start you had no other name.
Gwendolen, it is so painful for a man to find out so suddenly that all his life he has been speaking nothing but the truth. Can you ever forgive me?
I can, for I know you are sure to change.
Oh, my own one!
Letitia!
Frederick at last.
Cecily at last!
My nephew, you seem to be showing signs of triviality.
On the contrary, Aunt Augusta, for the first time in my life, I'm realizing the vital importance of being earnest.